everyone. Welcome back. This is Sawyer Frank, your co-host of the B2B Uncut podcast. Today, I'm joined by Brian Beck. Hello, Brian. How you doing today?
Doing great, Sawyer. I'm excited to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, a long time coming, brother. So maybe we can just get started by asking a little bit about yourself, your background. Obviously, you're doing incredible things alongside your partner, Andy Hoare at the Master B2B.
Yeah.
Just for our audience today, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. Happy to, sir. Thanks again. Right. I've been in this e-commerce field for, 25 years, making me old here, Sawyer. Every time I say that, another year goes by. Boy. Anyhow, yeah, I've spent most of my life as a practitioner, Sawyer, as I think you know. I was the VP of e-commerce at Harbor Freight Tools, a number of other companies, a lot on the consumer side for the first 17, 18 years of my career. But I really got into the B2B side about 7, 8 years ago now. I published a book called $1 Billion B2B e-commerce. And I partnered up with Andy Hoare on the Master B2B Thought Leadership Series, which has really evolved into a community of B2B e-commerce executives, that manufacturers and distributors. And we cover all kinds of topics that are top of mind for them. We meet in person, we have virtual events, et cetera. It's really been a great group. And the one other thing I do, so you know, for context for your listeners, is I also am a managing partner at a company called Insiba, where we work on Amazon programs for large B2B companies, particularly manufacturers. So somehow, Sawyer, I have 2 full-time jobs. I'm not sure how that happened.
And somehow we got you on this podcast. So thank you so much for joining, Brian. Obviously, a very well-respected association in Master B2B.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, just a couple months ago, you guys held your Mindshare Summit, which is an
Yeah.
annual summit. I believe this year that was in Chicago.
Correct.
Would love to learn a little bit more. I'm sure our audience members would as well, a little bit more about the summit,
Yeah.
the format. And then also, what were some of the key takeaways from this meeting, understanding you guys had just met a couple months ago?
Sure. Yeah, no, great. Thanks for that note there. And so our summit we do once a year, and it's a meeting of about 120, 130 or so of industry leaders from, mid-market to large manufacturers and distributors, the digital leaders, right? The VPs of e-com, the chief digital officers, et cetera. And it's not a conference as much as it is just sort of a get together, and we talk about issues that are top of mind. We do some research leading into it. And we have breakout sessions where we talk about, different topics that are really critical for these folks, and they vote on what they want to talk about in advance. So it's interesting to see, kind of what the industry wants to talk about. And again, these are folks that are all leading digital transformation at their companies. So, what do we find was top of mind for these folks? Well, it's things like data, for example. And, we talk about the data problem in e-commerce, and it's pervasive. It was one of our hottest roundtables at the event where we actually couldn't fit everybody in the room that wanted to participate in the conversation because it's a pervasive issue. And, it's kind of a hot potato. Manufacturers passing the ball to the distributors, but the distributors saying, hey, wait a minute, this is your product. We need good data from you. And then, of course, there's systems implement issues and, things like that, and PIM systems and such. So that was one hot topic, Sawyer. Others included things like ROI. How do I get my C-suite on board with investments? We, in the solution provider world, think about, there's a clearer return on investment here. But what we sometimes forget is that, these folks who are leading digital, they're fighting a battle in their companies, and they have to get the alignment of different business units. Their boards, their CEOs have to say yes. And what we found in our research, Sawyer, is that these folks are under more pressure than ever to drive ROI from these investments. And more so than even 2 or 3 years ago, our research revealed that. And so, you've got these folks wanting to figure out from their peers, how have they addressed it? How do they talk about ROI? How do they get their other businesses aligned? Those are just 2 of the topics. We talked AI, we talked all kinds of different, search relevance. We talked platforms. We talked all kinds of things that obviously are, in your world as well. So it was a great conference.
Can certainly relate to a lot of those challenges being on the vendor side, of course, being on the sales of selling an e-commerce
Right.
platform. They're all challenges that we need to overcome as well.
For sure.
This audience has heard me say it before, but with e-commerce being lower in the food chain, say, versus an investment in ERP or sometimes PIM, if your data readiness isn't there, it becomes a garbage in, garbage out scenario. So maybe we can start to talk a little bit about data, but I mean, is there
Sure.
anything in particular that you may have found from those roundtables or overheard in terms of how people have been able to overcome these datas? Is it new hires? Is it investments in third party solutions?
Yeah, we talked. It was interesting. It was funny. I joke, and you're too young, Sawyer. But if you remember, some of your listeners might remember Jerry Springer, right? It was a
Oh,
talk show. Okay, right? Go Jerry
yeah,
Springer. I joked that in that room, I facilitated the conversation on data, and defeating the dirty data problem, right? And so I joke we could have split the room into two: distributors and manufacturers on either side, and had them go at it, throw chairs at each other, Jerry Springer style. Because what one of the key things is, there's sort of a battle on who owns it, right? And so people recognize that there's an investment that's required to fix this. And you're absolutely right. If you can you can have a wonderful system, an e-commerce platform, a PIM system, whatever, but if you don't support that with resources, and there's a real investment there in resourcing, it's not going to get solved. You can have the greatest system in the world. Doesn't matter if you don't resource it correctly. So what came out of this discussion was the fact that, that particular type of investment, the type of people that people are investing in, hiring, to your point, it is about that. Systems are an important component of it, but they're not the solution in and of itself. And so I think we did reach kind of a kumbaya where, people were recognizing across different business units that they all share some responsibility in this. Ultimately, though, the manufacturers are the ones who know their products best, and are really ultimately, really the source of truth for this stuff. So the manufacturers have to step up, and I think there's some realization there. But we had folks like Zorro in the room, right? Talking, the CTO of Zorro, which is a division of Grainger, several billion dollars, talking about some of the things they're doing to address this and how they have effectively addressed it. And not only that, that there's actually a real return on all of this stuff, right? Because if you fix your product data, you're going to get better conversion rate on your website. You're going to get more sales. You're going to have happier customers. These are all things that you can quantify. So there's a myth there that you can't quantify this stuff. And I think that's being overcome.
Yeah, no, it's well said. I mean, ultimately in this B2B game, part of what it makes it fun is that it is a trickle down effect, right? I mean,
Right.
ultimately, all these products are, I shouldn't say all, but many of which are landing in the hand of consumers. And, oftentimes they're buying them through distributors or dealers or other sources, right? No, it's really interesting. So, obviously, it's a telltale sign that there needs to be ownership internally over the
Yeah.
data,
Mhm.
and I would say the same for an e-commerce platform, right? I mean, you're not going to find much success implementing an e-commerce platform if you don't have a project manager that's assigned to it with
Right.
buy-in from the business as well as the technology, right? I mean, these things work congruently. So, on that end, right, you talked a little bit about ROI.
Right.
I certainly can tell you from experience in selling this to e-commerce vendors or excuse me, merchants for the past 10 years, that there's probably some known metrics, but I don't want to make assumptions for our audience here today. So what would you say are some of those key metrics that, the C-suite
Yeah.
is really tracking today?
Right. Well, I mean, the C suite tends to go to the simplest metrics and the easiest to communicate, which are things like, e-commerce penetration to total sales. Oh, we've got, hey, we're Granger. We've got 70% of our sales coming from digital channels. That's kind of the loudest metric, the one people talk about the most, and the one that, I think, some folks can lean into to help with the business case. However, it doesn't tell the whole story, because we know that e-commerce impacts a lot of other things. We found this in the consumer side. I mean, sort of back in the day when when I was VP of e-commerce at these different companies, we would talk about how e-commerce, particularly places like Harbor Freight Tools, would be driving the website, would be driving in-store sales. This is stuff that's well established in the consumer side of e-commerce. B2B, this is brave new world stuff, right? I joke, it makes me feel young, right? Because it's the stuff we covered
Yeah.
15 years ago. Anyhow, but in B2B, it is actually more complex, in all fairness. I mean, you think about a company like, I'll use Cardinal Health as an example, Fortune 15 company, huge, huge, huge amount of revenue. Guess what? A lot of that goes through EDI, right? It goes through other types of format, but people research the products on their website, but they may make the purchase through a different channel. So you have this considerable challenge related to revenue attribution, which translates into challenges with your ROI model. So what do you do about it? Well, I think you have to look beyond just the penetration metric to find the answer. My favorite metric, and one that seems to resonate in our conversations around this, is share of wallet from your customer. How much are you getting from your customer that you could potentially get across all channels? It doesn't matter if it's digital or not. And are we seeing that metric improve? I think about, I was talking with Steve Baruch, who's the former CMO at MSC Industrial, which is a big, massive digitally advanced distributor in the industrial category. And he told me that they would go in and they'd actually understand their share of market at every single one of their customers. They would know how much market potential, how much sort of attainable market they had at their different customers, particularly obviously their bigger ones, but they would measure that. So what kind of share of wallet am I getting out of my potential at that customer? And they would know that. And this is an advanced company. These folks have digital people in their C-suite. They're really centered on digital and e-commerce as a business. And so I think we've got to think about metrics and what's coming out in our conversations in these roundtables is metrics like that, right? To think of beyond just e-commerce penetration or conversion rate on my website or things like that. What is it doing to the overall business? And you have to look across selling channels to capture that. And so that's my favorite metric anyway. What do you guys see anything like that on your in your
Oh,
in your
I wish it was more like that, if I'm being honest. Yeah, a lot of it comes down to brass tacks of, what the online channel is doing. And I think that's really, eye-opening for a lot of the audience that might be evaluating a new e-commerce platform, that it's not all about online, right? It's really become an omni-channel world where online revenue is very important, without a
yeah,
doubt.
yeah,
Uh, and across two different e-commerce vendors, I can tell you that most of these value propositions are the same. We're going to help you increase efficiency, which leads to cost
right,
saving. We are
right,
going to, help you increase customer satisfaction and retention. We are going to help you increase sales by average order volume, whatever it may be. But,
right,
uh, I think this world is evolving, as we know. E-commerce in the B2B game is pretty young. Much like yourselves, obviously, Oro Commerce has a lot of experience in the B2C world
right,
as well,
right.
and they're not created equal, right? I think this conversation to this point has made that pretty evident, that there's a lot of channels, right? And
Yeah,
and so, I think one of the challenges that a lot of organizations are having, that we're seeing as well, is creating that story for executive buy-in.
right,
And, I think a lot of it, what it comes down to is getting boots on the ground and talking to the people that are really experiencing these challenges.
yeah,
So for one of these evaluations that we're going through at the moment, it's working with a certain business entity. They've built a small group of
mhm,
sales reps and key customers that they're meeting with on a regular basis to build that case.
mhm.
So, but no, the challenge I think in B2B as well is that no two businesses are the same. In my past
True.
life, and I can
Mm,
steal this from a mentor that I had there as well, is, take a consumer brand like North Face and Patagonia, which are two of my past customers that we help
okay,
build B2B sites for. To the consumer's mindset, it's the same down puffy jacket, right? I'm buying the same product. How they're selling it and how they're using their technology to put that jacket in front of their retailers and ultimately their consumers is entirely different.
mhm,
And I think the same goes for two organizations that might share the same technology as well, right? So you
yep,
could be an industrial distributor and, let's say, a medical distributor. Just because you're both using the same ERP system doesn't mean that the integration is going to look the same.
right,
So,
yeah,
I mean, a lot of our competitors, I think a lot of the vendors in the market will talk about connectors, right? Pre-built integrations. I think if you talk to the folks here at Oral Commerce, most of us would say that no such thing exists,
mm,
right? That because your business is unique to yourself, it's going to require some customization.
yeah,
So, I think that kind of leads us into talking about a few things. omnichannel being increasingly more challenging.
Right.
Obviously, you're I can't say resident expert, but certainly someone that we can lean on to talk about Amazon and that
Uh,
Goliath coming into the
oh,
equation.
sure.
B.
Yep.
Um, Maybe we can talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. Well, it's, and thanks for that color. That's really interesting because I would agree with you that B2B is a very diverse industry. And, you talk about it in general. But as you get down into specifics of customer needs, they are bespoke by different types of different type of industry, customer groups, et cetera. There is one, and when we think about omnichannel, and it ties into the ROI stuff we were just talking about, because one of the common things that we do see that we hear from our community is overcoming this whole issue of incrementality. And this applies to Amazon too. This is misconception. We have to defeat this, Sawyer. This is misconception that it's only about incremental revenue, all these channels, Amazon, e-commerce, there's no such thing as omni-channel. It's only about it. Aren't we just shifting revenue from one channel to another? Isn't it just how much of this is really incremental? Wrong thinking, guys. You have to be thinking about this as this is an existential issue. If you're not in front of your customers in where they want to buy, and particularly if you're a manufacturer, if you're not where they want to buy in the best representation possible, you are losing relevance. And I use this example, with Amazon, right? This is my company in SIBA. We deal with this all the time, working with large global manufacturers on their Amazon presence. We look at, just and this is one of my most fun exercises, Sawyer. You take a company that, a company's, product category, I don't know, whatever, abrasive sander or something, or a pneumatic sander or something, just some kind of a tool or whatever your business is. Search for that keyword in Amazon. Look at what shows up. And what's interesting? The whole competitive landscape is different. And there's, everyone's, you look at the results. It's all just cheap stuff coming out of Asia. You know what? Some of that stuff is actually pretty good. And guess what? It's coming from the same factories you're building in. And guess what? They're better at Amazon than you are. And guess what? You're losing revenue and relevance to those 75% of B2B buyers who are now millennials using Amazon before they use other channels to research products. You're losing relevance and it's slow, right? It's a slow decline. Anyway, my point is just, the smartest manufacturers, and again, I'm talking more on that side of the business. When you think about omnichannel, you want to be in these channels where the end buyer wants to buy. You can't control their channel preferences and stop trying, right? You just say, well, I only want to sell through this channel, that channel, because I've sold through it for 100 years and it's built my business this way. Fine. You're not abandoning those channels. You continue to empower them. But, it's really about making sure you're relevant, which includes your own, and, to what Oro does, your own e-commerce, your own digital presence. It's fascinating. And we just did another data point, Sawyer, you'd be interested in, is that the number one place people want to research buyers, we surveyed B2B buyers for our state of B2B e-commerce report we just released. And the number one place they want to research the B2B buyer is the manufacturer's website. And guess what number two was? Amazon Business. Guess what number three was? A distant third, distributors. Okay, so this has implications for distributors, but if you're a manufacturer, you need to be paying attention to this stuff. You need to be talking to Oro and looking at deploying a capability on your own website, your own digital presence online, because that's what the ultimate B2B buyer wants. Even if they don't buy on your website, they want to research there. You're the authority on your product. So I think from omnichannel, from a manufacturer's perspective, you've got to be looking at these emerging channels and recognizing the reality of what's happening. I put this in my book, right? The brutal reality. I stole it from Good to Great. But the brutal reality of the situation is that the end buyer's preferences have changed. Now, if you're a distributor, omnichannel means empowering your sales force. It means knowing what these other channels are doing, like Amazon. In fact, I encourage distributors to look at having some form of an Amazon presence so they can know what that channel is doing. Amazon every day. I'm going up to Seattle to spend time with Amazon Business this week, Sawyer, and I'm amazed at what they're doing in B2B. They continue to raise the bar, and they're taking advantage of the fact that a lot of distribution, particularly mid-market, is not doing the things they should be doing to enhance their digital experience. So Omnichannel for a distributor, I think, means empowering the sales force with digital tools, ensuring you're at least at the level of an Amazon in terms of your digital experience, if not better, and taking advantage of your industry expertise and bringing that to life on your digital side. Because you're not doing these things, it's a gradual decline. We're seeing the number of distributors in the United States fall every year, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and this is one of them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, obviously, consumer behavior has changed the behavior of a B2B buyer.
Right?
And you can call me young. I think I'm on the older end of the millennials, but it doesn't change the fact that I can relate, right? I always want
Right.
to research before buying anything, almost to a fault, to be honest. But it's funny because it really kind of brings this conversation full circle as well. Because at the end of the day, if the user experience, if the data is inaccurate or even looks concerning, as a buyer, I'm more discerning as ever. I will move on to the next manufacturer. I will move on to the next distributor, and
Right.
have no shame about it. Ultimately, so
Yeah.
it's funny because I feel like there are now some opportunities for obviously manufacturers to cleanse their data to support their entire ecosystem of buyer, but also for the distributor to pick up the data. I understand that there's a lot of data feeds that are taking a hold across different industries. I'd love to get your take on that. It might be a hot take, but do you feel like these data feeds that distributors can subscribe to are a benefit to their business, or how could they potentially improve?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with, or have spoken multiple times and worked with affiliated distributors. If you're
Sure,
familiar with the
of
group,
course.
and that's one of the things that they do, right? Their core, one of their core values is for distributors is to work with suppliers to normalize data and make that available to their members. And quite frankly, yes, it's a great benefit because data, it's fundamental, it's foundational. If you don't have clean and accurate data, you can't be effective in e-commerce selling. And so, absolutely, I think there's an argument that says, hey, if I have the same data as everyone else, aren't I just commoditizing, my product listings and it's going to impact my Google SEO ratings. It's going to, I'm just look like everybody else. Well, I will tell you, if you're a distributor, you need to be differentiating on something other than that because that's baseline. If you just think you're going to put up better product descriptions than the next guy and win, maybe 5 years ago you could do that. That's going away. That's not sustainable. You need to differentiate based on something else. Service, value, expertise is the best way to distribute or differentiate if you're a distributor. These are the things that you have to look at, or sell your business before it's too late to Granger, MSC Motion, whoever, one of the big big distributors who was buying everybody. Because frankly, just differentiating that is not enough. So I think what we're seeing is a baseline that is being, with all this normalized data. And if you don't have good data, you're just going to slip further and further behind. And so, join an AD or one of the other industry associations or one of these solutions that has good data, but don't think you're going to differentiate on that. It's not, this is a cost of entry in survival, I think, in this new world we're in.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Earlier in our conversation, obviously we're joking about different generations, but I recently saw a statistic that showed that 10,000 baby boomers are retiring each and every day. And a
Wow.
good portion of those baby boomers are obviously business owners. I would imagine many of them are
Mhm.
the heads, owners, presidents, CEOs of some of these mid market distributors, right?
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
Obviously, there's the potential of them being handed down in a family business scenario or being sold off. But for those that are willing to stick it out and weather the storm a little longer, how would you suggest that they actually get involved with something like Amazon that you had mentioned earlier?
Right.
Obviously, they should test it out and have a presence, but where do they get started?
Well, I think for, the business case for a manufacturer is different than a distributor for Amazon. And if you're a manufacturer with any kind of differentiated product, you need to be there. That's that simple. And how do you start? Well, you need the expertise to help you launch. That's why we have a business, of course, a little self promotion there. We help manufacturers in particular. and distributors to some degree launch their programs on Amazon and manage them effectively so they don't cause channel conflict. That's the big concern everybody has is it's going to undercut all my other channels. It's going to take away business. Well, no, not if you do it right, because we're getting volume shifting there. You're really taking back market, particularly from, new Amazon specific sellers, particularly coming out of Asia and China. So, there's a recapture there of the market. Anyway, so, you need to have expertise, whether you're a manufacturer or a distributor, you need to have expertise in how to manage the channel. For a distributor, the best use cases I've seen there are really two. Um, one is that you can use private label product. If you have a private label line, we have several distributors that do that where we sell their product on Amazon. It has two benefits. One, it's got revenue and profit incrementality to it, but it's also allowing you to learn what Amazon's doing, their features, their functionalities, the way they behave. This is a new, a new animal in the business, $40 billion animal in B2B sales. Amazon Business. And so I think for a distributor, that's one. The other is a lot of distributors we've been working with, well, not a lot, but some will go back to their manufacturers or suppliers and say, hey, supplier, I'll be your Amazon division and I'll work with me. I'll stock your product. I'll respect your MAP policy. And, let me be one of your, authorized Amazon sellers. And so we'll help distributors with that approach as well. And that has some benefits, the same sort of two benefits I just described, which is incremental revenue and learning what Amazon's doing. But make no mistake, if you're a distributor, Amazon is also, targeting the B2B buyer. They're looking to take share in B2B, and where they're taking it is in the long tail. They're taking it and where they've been so successful with $40 billion in revenue last year in B2B is in those transactions where not a lot of consultation or expertise is required. And that is where the distributor can shine. That's where the smart distributors, if I'm the next generation taking over a distribution company, I'm making sure I'm leaning into my expertise and I'm bringing it to life digitally. I need a best in class e-commerce platform that will help me to do this. And I need to get my data right and everything else. So, you need partners like you, Sawyer, to help you get there, right? Like you guys. But that's critical. And you have to make some investments into this stuff. There's no avoiding it or you're going to lose relevance.
Yeah, appreciate that. And couldn't agree more, obviously. That's one of the many reasons why I do what I do.
All right. Of
This
course.
has been such an enlightening conversation, Brian. It's always such a pleasure to have you. As I understand, you've been on the podcast before, so I should have said welcome back.
Yeah, right. That's right. It's
Um,
been a little bit.
but
Hmm.
we always like to kind of leave an episode with something fun. So instead of asking you what's a book or a recent movie that you'd recommend to our audience,
Yeah.
I would imagine that you're a man of travel. So
Yeah.
what's a great place that you might recommend for our audience to travel here, both either domestically or internationally that you've loved?
Oh boy, man, there's so many places. I mean, I do a lot of, as you can imagine, sort of as you do too. I travel a lot for work, but also with family. I have to say one of my most relaxing and fun places is actually Utah, Park City. I spend a lot of time out there because my family and I, we love the mountains. We like to ski. It's wonderful. It's beautiful landscape and just very relaxing. And not only in the winter, in the summer too. It's really gorgeous in the fall with the leaves changing. It's just beautiful. We get out there probably 6, 7 times a year because we love it so much. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd recommend that as a great place to travel to if you're looking for some downtime, some family time.
I ironically have a trip planned there
Oh,
next
do you?
month. Oh yeah, we'll
Next
be there
month? Oh, cool.
for 4 days.
Nice.
Yeah, in Park City.
Awesome.
So Brian, just with maybe the last minute remaining here, what are some of the cool events that you guys have coming up that you might be able to tell our audience about? Obviously, you've got a
Yeah.
podcast of your own. Would love for
Right.
them to know a little bit more about that as well.
Sure. So, yeah, touching on that first, Friday 15 is what we call it. So Andy Hoare and I get together on our weekly, every Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We have a LinkedIn Live that we do. And you can also find our past episodes in podcast format on Spotify, Google, Apple, and on our website, masterb2b.com. And we talk about all kinds of issues, just like the things we've been talking about. We debate things. It's intended to be 15 minutes. We usually go to 20. But anyhow, it's a lot of fun. And really free form discussion on these issues. And in terms of events, yeah, thanks for the call out there. We run physical events all over the United States. In fact, this fall in September and October, we have executive roundtables we're running in 9 markets: New York, LA, Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Dallas, Atlanta, several others, Denver. And these are just get-togethers in the afternoon. We talk about key issues like the ones I'm describing, ones we talked about today, and then we have a nice cocktail and dinner and just do a lot of networking. It's about 5 hours. We start in the late afternoon, 4 o'clock. You can find out more by going to our website, masterb2b.com, and just click on events, and you'll see the future events there. And you can register there. It's free for practitioners to join. So anyhow, yeah, thanks for the call out. We love to get people together and talk about these things. So excited to see who joins us. And you should come to one of these, Sawyer. You guys should get out
Yeah.
and join us.
I'll be there soon enough. I promise. I've definitely got my eyes on the Master Summit for next year.
Cool. Good.
And we're going to be at some distributor events too, like MDM Shift in Denver.
Oh yeah.
So
Great.
we'll be able to catch you out there in addition to the B2B Online Florida, which is, I
Yes.
believe, met for the first time. So
Yes. Yeah. We'll be there in November. And yeah, I've been to MDM Shift as well. It's a good show. So awesome. Well, great.
awesome.
Well, good to chat with you, Sawyer. Thanks for the opportunity to speak
Yep.
with you and your audience.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian.